Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. Welcome to my channel, How Dance Healed Me. My name is Jo Freeman and I'm a dancer, a choreographer, a teacher and a mental health practitioner in the creative arts. So welcome to my channel, How Dance Healed Me, where I talk about all my past experiences of some pretty dark places, and those of you who have seen my previous episodes, thank you so much for all your support. Let's dive into the third episode, which is choosing passion over poison. Now, in this episode, obviously, choosing passion over poison entails my passion, which is dance, and my poison, which at the time this is going to be relevant for, is alcohol. I struggled with a big alcohol abuse relationship when I was living in London, and I'm here to share my experience of how dance literally healed me out of it. So I'm here to share my experience of alcoholism and how it really affected my life, how much I was drinking, what it was doing to affect me physically and emotionally, mentally, and then how dance played a massive part in me healing for that and helped me to reach sobriety for a year and a half, very, very short while ago. So let's dive into this episode. So when I was living in London as a freelance dancer, obviously working in hospitality has its connotations with alcohol as you are serving it all the time. And obviously many of the workers and employees I was with used it to relax, very much like I did, as well as it is a very busy, mental, hectic lifestyle, especially with me trying to cultivate a dance career primarily as well on top of that. So I was drinking every day. And I know for some people it's quite usual to have a couple of glasses of wine. However, I was very petite at this time and I was drinking about a bottle at least a day, if not the equivalent being a few ciders and shots. Obviously shots on top of that. On the weekend, it would be so much in excess of, a couple of bottles of wine, including shots as well. And it just was growing and getting massively out of hand for me. So I think I want to get across mainly not that, drinking so much was so bad. Most of us know that. Most of us know there is evidence out there to suggest it is probably one of the worst things for your body. It really slows down your immune system. It really cuts off the absorption of, nutrients, and it really does send your mind and your mental state into really detrimental places. However, I just really want to get across how I felt. Now, in the society that I was sort of surrounding myself with, not necessarily my friends, but just the conventions that were sort of expected, is that if you go out and if you drink and if you sort of are relaxed and, you are a funny kind of person, then not taking life too seriously, you are, you're attractive, and it's about seeking attention, and it's about wanting to try and be, the sort of center of attention, and that is a form of validation. And I was so obsessed with this form of validation. I didn't even know, I had no idea that this is, what I kind of saw as success and saw as, being the best part of myself. It was all very much down to how other people saw me and how they responded to me. So, in a social setting, alcohol is just so easily on hand, and I found it very hard to have self-control and to not sort of just to always people please and to always say, yeah, I'll have one more, especially if people are buying them for you. I never said no. I was someone, unfortunately, who grew up where saying no was a very, very difficult thing. At the time, it was about self-control and just wanting to be someone that I really wasn't, be someone who was pleasing everyone else, and that person that sort of drank too much, and that was idealized. If you drank too much, then you sort of become comedic, and that was the role I sort of took. I just unfortunately found that I was more sort of listened to or more sort of liked if I did drink a lot of alcohol. Mainly this is how I felt. I felt as though I could relax and I could be more relatable to people. So that's sort of how it started. Now, obviously, with alcohol comes the bad side effects. And they are, you know, the hangovers, the paranoia, the sort of worry of, you know, what other people thought of me. And I was in a constant fluctuation of, you know, that sort of tipsy time where, you know, I felt a bit more confident and I could open up a little bit more. And then it just went straight over the edge. And I had severe blackouts for a good 4 or 5 years when I was living in London. I would barely remember the night before. I'd barely remember conversations I'd had with people, what I'd said, what I hadn't. I had massive fallouts with friends because, you know, who I thought I was someone who was sort of nice and open and, you know, and compassionate. But when I'd had a few drinks, I would just prioritize the really, really, really wrong things, which was getting attention, especially from males, unfortunately. So, yeah, it really did have a massive detriment, and I almost just tried to brush it under the carpet and, you know, think, oh, well, no, I'm a nice person, my mum still loves me, so that's okay. And I'm not saying that I did anything, you know, severe to hurt anyone. Obviously I didn't have those intentions, but because I was so succumbing to the way alcohol made me feel and the sort of role that I was putting myself in trying to please other people, I really, really would neglect my my true values, and that's what I really, really struggled with. So the reason why I chose the title of this episode to be Choosing Passion Over Poison was because, yes, dance was my particular passion, but I really want to try and relate to those who have a different passion. And that is really your open doorway to getting yourself out of having certain addictions or certain sort of preferences into being a little bit more detrimental to your health and your relationships, whether it be alcohol, whether it be other forms of drug, whether it be, you know, relying on recreational or even pharmaceutical drugs. Sometimes it is better to just sort of realign yourself with what makes you feel a more integral joy and something that makes you feel more fulfilled. And so that's where I want to sort of see this passion side, not just dance specifically, but something that you can perhaps think about what makes you feel passionate and relate that to healing in a different kind of way as well. Now, it wasn't necessarily that I was driven to dance all the time, because obviously when you are struggling with certain addictions, you know, there are times where you just want to shut off from the world. And I felt so low in many, many situations. I did have suicidal thoughts. I had depression that was so strong. I had to cut out speaking to my family for certain amounts of time. You know, I ghosted my mum for certain amounts of time just so I could mask what was going on. I was very good at hiding it. And actually the first year of my sort of dance company I was with, my director actually took me aside and said, look, you're not keeping up, and you know, you're struggling, you're getting thinner, you are losing concentration in class, and ultimately I'm really worried about you. And I'm so grateful he did that, because that was the one sort of, you know, nudge in the right direction, or for want of a better word, excuse me, kick up the arse, that I really, really needed. Because it wasn't necessarily that I had the drive all the time to dance. All I knew was when I felt the lowest of the low, I would just have this voice in my head and my body would just please ooze like the idea of dancing. And so that was just an idea, and I thought, well, I'm so lost, I might as well try it. So I dragged myself out of whatever hole I was in and I got myself to a class. I wore baggy clothes, I stood at the back, I tried to just, you know, morph into the crowd, and that was where everything really switched for me. So that was where everything switched for me, because when you physically move, when you're moving in that way, I would push myself, I'd be in pain, my brain would be going, why am I doing this? You don't have to do this. You're feeling hungover, you're feeling like your body needs to rest. And it just suddenly took over. The passion, the joy, the remembrance of where I was when I'd done this when I was younger, and you know, the strength that I had in myself when I'd experienced it before just suddenly came to the surface. And at the end of every class, whether I'd do it every day, whether I'd do it once every few months sometimes, I'd suddenly get a new realization that this was what I was meant to be focusing on. And it was more about me being physical than me being detrimental and external in where I felt like I was enjoying my life. So my biggest advice for this video is follow your passion. It doesn't even have to be a big passion. It could be making cups of tea, and you can start conversations about those cups of tea, and they can really spark your imagination and get yourself going in a more fulfilled and holistic way. When we really succumb to these sort of quick fix and short term gratification methods of drinking, of taking drugs, of, feeling like we need validation from elsewhere, our lack of fulfillment just triples and our self-worth really, really gets down. And so I would say, don't beat yourself up about having a drink or two, but if it is getting a bit far and if you've got a problem, or if you could probably navigate life in a little bit more of a fulfilling way and something that you enjoy the most, because at the end of the day, when we drink too much, we just don't feel great. Prioritize the passions over the pleasures, and it will be extraordinary in where you see yourself. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in a month, but in a year or two's time, you will absolutely transform your life like I have now. I spent a year and a half sober, and it was one of the best times of my life. I've never ever been able to explore so many different new and exciting things that I felt more aligned to me, actually found more community, more socializing in a completely different and more holistic way, and people who really appreciate and see me rather than just the person that I associated myself with and thought was a better version of myself when I was drinking. It really, really wasn't who I actually was. So I would say prioritize the passions over the pleasures, try and avoid the poisons, and just see where life takes you. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. I really, really appreciate it. I feel like alcohol abuse and just use in general should be spoken about more with friends. And if you ever want to approach me about any kind of issues or problems you feel like you're having, or just any questions you have on this topic, then please feel free to drop them in the comments or DM me over on Instagram at joe_freeman_10. I'll link that in the description box below as well. If you liked it, give it a like. If you've got any thoughts about anything that I've said, then please drop a comment down below, and do subscribe so that you find out when my next video is being released next week. And I look forward to joining you then for another episode of How Dance Healed Me.